Hello everybody, I'm InTheLittleWood, also known as Martin, and this is a quick video dated November 2022, just in case things change in the future and it might not work for you, on how to create hats, items, weapons or tools for the Java edition of Minecraft. So the reason I'm making this video is because I've been making a bunch of hats for my fellow rats in the Rats SMP. We've got like a lovely straw hat for Scott, we've got a hard hat for Timmy, we've even got these ears that I've got a massive chunk bitten out of them when Crow got into a bit of a scuffle with a cat. So here is a quick tutorial on how you can do it for yourselves, and let's get started. You're going to start off by clicking on Java, block or item. You're going to go to create model, and we're going to just give it the name tutorial for now. I personally prefer changing the UV mode to box UV. I won't go into the complexities of it today. This is supposed to just be a nice, thick and fast video on how to do everything. Go over to the right hand side and press add cube. And then what I like to do when I'm modeling the hats is I like to make this block 8 by 8 by 8 in terms of its size. I like to move it across by 4 and back by 4, so it's basically centered on the canvas. And your basic movement keys are going to be V, which is for moving around. R is going to be for rotation, but you can already see that the rotation over here isn't in the right place. If you ever want to get it to the back to the center of the block that you're working on, you can actually press this little button up here next to the pivot point listing, and you can press it and it goes right to the center, and now it'll be rotating like that, as opposed to rotating like this. So that's a nice little tip. And then the only other one you're probably going to be using is S. S is for scale, and that allows you to basically drag out the dimensions rather than having to type numbers in the top right corner. So now that we've got this cube, let's click on it, and we can either do right click and copy and then Control V to paste, or a really quick key is Control and D for duplicate. We're going to move that up. I'm going to right click and change its color by using marker color to make it, let's say, blue. And we're going to make this the brim of the hat. So if I scale it down, we'll have it be a single pixel tall. So at the minute it's 8 wide, 8 long, and it's only 1 tall, I guess. But obviously this is going to be sat very, very flush with the hat. So a really cool thing you can do is you can actually inflate a block. So if I was to put 0.1 and press enter on inflate on the size, it actually just makes it that little bit bigger than it might have been previously. And it will actually just stretch the texture upwards with it. So you don't even have to paint anything new when you make the texture for this thing. It will just automatically scale with it. Maybe if I do like 0.2 for now to give it a nice big brim, that'll look good for us. And I think what I'll do is I will do Control D again on the base that I've got. I'm going to move it upwards. Now, as you can see, we are getting a bit of a visual blockage between the brim and this block up here. So there are a couple of different viewing modes that you can go into by pressing the Z key or Z. So if I press Z once, we go from texture mode into block mode or solid mode. Press it again and we make our way into wireframe mode, and this one's really helpful. So in this one, you can basically only see the outline of the blocks and you can start to move things accordingly. Now, as you can see, when I'm moving things upwards like this, it's still never quite landing on top of this block as you might probably prefer. If you wanted to move this just a teensy bit to try and make this line up a little bit better, then what you can do is you can press and hold on the movement, and if you hold shift whilst moving it, you'll see that it actually moves a lot less in a single motion. So rather than going up 1 block at a time, you can actually go up by 0.25, so basically a quarter of a block. Now, the issue we have here is that that's still not quite as flush as we'd like it to be. That's purely the fault of inflate, because obviously inflate's not designed to play nicely with normal size blocks. But there is a sneaky little thing you can do which you might find useful, or you may never use it. So if you press X when you've got any block selected, you'll notice now that you can hover over the points in the corners. Now if I click on that point just there, then click on the brim of the hat and then click on its corner, it actually moves the block that I've got perfectly into position. And obviously this is quite an awkward dimension now, or positioning for it. It's like 0.2, 0.2 and 0.8. So I would only recommend using this if you're comfortable with making certain motions and movements, but it's just nice to know that that exists for the future. But for now, I don't mind the hat being slightly intersected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the brim of the hat, or the main body of the hat, to be yellow. I'm going to stretch it upwards so it looks comically huge. Maybe even I'll duplicate this one more time. We'll move it up to here. We'll do a centering of the pivot, rotate it around, and now we've got this kind of like giant block. Maybe even I'll change this to be like the color orange for a moment, and maybe puff it out a little bit with inflate so that it's just slightly bigger than the hat, because whenever you have blocks that are perfectly overlaid, depending on which pixel you are viewing it from, it struggles to decide whether to show me the orange blocks texture or the yellow ones, which is why having that little bit of inflate and trying to avoid overlaps is usually the best thing to do. Now, one thing I've done for every single rat so far is I have created some ears, and I wanted to show you this because this is another thing you can do when it comes to scaling and texturing, and you can actually go down to 0 on any given axis. So look, if I drag this down to 0 here, this is now a perfectly flat plane. So the dimensions up here are now 12 by 0 by 8. So if I was to look at this from the X side, I would never be able to see it. If I am not like hovering onto it or I don't have it selected, I literally will never be able to see it. So if I had ears there, somebody looking at me on my side profile legit wouldn't be able to see it. So you have a few options here. The one that I prefer the most is basically centering the pivot point and just doing a very simple rotate outwards like that. You can move the pivot point if you wanted to initially, so you could probably move it across more to like the edge of the block and then rotate the ear outwards, because then, as you can see, whenever you're looking at the block, you're always going to see the ear just fine. And this is where the first issue comes into play, is that obviously in an ideal world, I would be able to rotate the ear upwards slightly and also back. But watch what happens when I try to do this. It just snaps it down again. So Minecraft Java only lets you rotate blocks 22.5 degrees at a time. And then you can also only rotate on one axis. So if I wanted to rotate on, say, the red axis like this and put an angle on it, as soon as I try to rotate on blue, it snaps it out of where it was, and now this is the new dominant axis. It's very annoying, but you'll figure out soon enough what you can do to kind of play the game and the system to make things work for you. So the next thing I do is I pull the ears in. I normally go for about 5 by 6 for the ears is usually the dimensions I do. And I normally just put like a very gentle rotate on them. So say for this one, we'll do the more sort of like droopy downward positioned ears. I'm going to move the ears up just ever so slightly, and then I'm going to basically duplicate this with Control D, transform, flip, and flip X just to get a duplicate of it on the other side. I'll make them pink just for simplicity for now. From here, let's go ahead and delete our reference head because we're not going to need that anymore. And we're going to do Control A to select all of the cubes at once. You can manually select them one at a time by holding Control, or if you go on the list over here, you can press on the first one, hold Shift, and press on the last one and it will choose them. Then you make your way over to the left hand side. You want to do create texture, give it the same name just for simplicity's sake, so call it tutorial. And then the pixel density is the thing that you might be interested in. So as it stands right now, if I were to create that, it is a single pixel on this face. But if I were to create it with the 32 instead of the 16, I would actually have 2 pixels for each bit. So it basically doubles the amount the more you go up each time. So that's totally up to you whether you want a really simplistic look or if you want to go slightly more complicated. But for now, let's just do the regular old 16 by 16, the base sort of size for most Minecraft textures, and here we are. Now let's just do some really rough and dirty textures for this. So we're going to click on paint in the top corner. I am going to go to this little toggle right here, and this basically decides where you're going to paint and where you're going to fill in. So you can either do face, which is each face of the block. You can either do element, which is the entire block, all sides of it, all faces. You can do connected colors. So for example, for this one, if I'm using the bucket tool and I click on this bit of blue here, it won't color that one in. It will only color the same color that it's touching. So it will only do the rim. Same for there, same for there, same for there. Really nice and simple, that one. Or for example, if I had a couple dots around here and then I changed it to red and I changed the fill type to be something like colors, that will change the one singular color all across that face. But for now, just to keep it nice and simple, we are literally just going to do entire element. We're going to have this one be a red color. We're going to have this one be a yellow color. This one be like a sort of a darker yellow color. And then the ears, I will show you something cool that you can do with them. So when I'm designing the rat ears, what I like to do is I like to take off the corners to give that curvature. And then I also like to just pop a little bit of color on the inside of the ear, just to sort of mimic the more fleshy tones that you get. And then before we go into the next stage, you just need to be mindful of one more thing. And that is the fact that the plane at the moment doesn't actually have a texture on the back. So we're going to bring up the paint menu. We're going to hold Alt and click on this dark blue here to select it. Then I'm going to use the paint bucket tool to basically fill in the back, and I'll use the eraser again, which is just on E as you would expect. All right, time for the fun bit, to finally see what it would look like inside the game of Minecraft. Click on display in the top right corner, and the first screen you're going to see is going to be how it's going to look in the right hand from the third person perspective. Obviously this is huge. So let's go to scale over here on the left hand side, and I'm just going to take it down to like half a block. It doesn't really matter what size you go for. It's totally personal preference, but that to me looks a little bit more manageable than the ginormous thing that was nearly as big as Scott a moment ago. Translation, for those confused, is literally just the position. So you can go left, right, forward, backward, and up, down. And then rotation is really important here because rotation in this part of the development isn't limited to 22.5 degrees at a time. You can actually do smaller movements, smaller increments. You can do single digits rather than those big leaps, which you can use cleverly later on when you're placing the item on, say, the head, to actually get the angles that you're looking for. Now, obviously on the head currently, the scale's not quite right. The golden number here that you want to use is 1.6. 1.6 on all axis is exactly what you're going to be looking for. I'm going to move the hat up just so it's in a nice position. And there you go. We've got our comically huge hat. The other options are, of course, third person left. You can do first person as well, which I'm going to take down to about maybe like half the size. So 0.5 on each of those. There we go, 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. We've just done head a moment ago, which is arguably the most important one. I might even make it lean back a little bit as well, just so it's got a little bit of curvature to it. Nice. The next option over here is called ground, and this is basically what it looks like in its dropped form. Frames are an interesting one. So of course you have an item frame and how the item might look inside of it. So let's say I go for like scale 0.7 here, 0.7 on the scale. And positioning wise, that already looks pretty good, to be honest. But the really interesting one is next to item frame, there is item frame invisible. And I suspect that this is how in the Rats SMP, we have things like giant bottles of wine that are sat around the world. I know they're in item frames, and probably what they're doing is they're rotating those bottles of wine and then basically just having them like stick outward like that. So in the real world, they would look something more like that, which is very cool. So have a little play around with that. It's quite fun. And then finally, one of the more important ones, that is the GUI. So this is going to be the crafting menu, your inventory, as well as the hotbar. So let's go ahead and scale this down to like 0.5 to make it fit in a little bit better. We're going to scroll it down, and I can't actually see the pink of the ears. So let's do a rotation on that axis, so then we can now finally see them. Inventory looks good. Hotbar looks pretty good. And we're all done. All right, so it's now time for the technical bit. I know that these sorts of portions of videos can be quite overwhelming, so every time I go through this, I'm going to go all the way back to the resource packs folder, and we'll go in through the layers each time just so you don't get lost, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is create a folder. So maybe for this one, I've already done one earlier on today, but I'll call this tutorial hat, all as one word. Inside of here, the very first thing you're going to need is a file called pack.mc meta. You can grab this from literally any resource pack that exists, and I will do a quick Google before I publish this video to find out where you can maybe find it if you don't currently have access to it. And inside of this folder, we are going to create a folder called assets. Inside of that, we're going to create a folder called Minecraft. Inside of that one, we're going to create one called models. Then we're going to create one called block. And then finally, we're going to create a folder called custom. Now in this custom folder, as you might guess from the word models, is where our model will reside. So let's head back into Blockbench. We're going to go to File and Export and Model. Nice and simple. Then we'll navigate through again. So we're going to go through Tutorial Hat, Assets, Minecraft, Models, Block, Custom. And we're going to save Tutorial into there. So now we're going to have to do the same for the texture for the hat as well. So back in the Resource Packs folder, we're going to start the same process again. So Tutorial Hat, Assets, Minecraft. And then instead of Models this time, we'll create a new folder called Textures. Inside of Textures, we'll create one called Block, and then another one called Custom, so it's following the same folder structure as the previous thing. And then back in Blockbench, I've just gone right click, save as on our texture on the left hand side, and basically found that same folder again, so Textures, Block, Custom, and we'll pop the PNG in there. And now there is only one more step left in order to bring this item to life. We need to go into Tutorial Hat again, go into Assets, Minecraft, Models, and then instead of going into Block, we want to create a brand new folder called Item. And inside of item, there is going to be a little bit of text in the description that you can grab, and that is going to be for something called carvedpumpkin.json. And inside of this file is a very simple piece of information. All we've got is the fact that it is a carved pumpkin. We're going to give it a ID number, so in this case it'll be 1, and then we're also going to tell it what the model is called. So this one here is actually correct straight away, and if you were to make a second hat that you also wanted to have inside of the game, you just have to remember that you just have to pop a comma after the first one, and then you can copy paste the code, change it to say number 2, and you can pick any number you'd like. Obviously change the model name. If we created, I don't know, like a chef hat, you can call it chef hat, and then you're all sorted. The general rule is that every line has to have this little comma after it, except for the very last one. So say you created 20 hats, hat 1 through to 19 needs a comma, the last number 20 doesn't. Now, the reason that people use the carved pumpkin is because that allows you to then use the item in-game, and you can take it on and off your head without having to use a command. But you're probably already thinking to yourself, aren't I going to see that weird inside the pumpkin blurred image when I put it on? The answer at the moment is yes. So what we're going to do, straight back out to resource pack again, we're going to go into tutorial hat, assets, Minecraft, texture, and we're going to create a new folder in here called MISC, M-I-S-C. Basically stands for miscellaneous. And inside of here, you want to basically put a blank image called pumpkin blur. It has to specifically be called that because that is the name that Minecraft will be looking for. And all this is at the moment is a 64 by 64 pixel image. And as you could probably guess, because it's pulling this instead of the original Minecraft one, you won't see anything when you put a pumpkin on your head. All right, what you're going to want to do next is pop into options and resource pack in Minecraft. Find the resource pack that you've been working on for this tutorial. So of course mine was called tutorial hat. And then we're going to want to hop into single player and basically just fire up a creative world. So I'll go into this one. And here we are then. Don't question the skin, just roll with it. I'm the tailor-made for a reason, okay? Now, the next step is super simple. We are going to do the command that will bring this item into the game so we can pop it on our noggin. So, it's a very simple give command. /give at s is for self. You can do the player's name in this slot if you wanted to, so I could type in the Littlewood. We're going to give myself the carved pumpkin, and then you want to do a curly open bracket, and you want to put CustomModelData, and then the number that follows this is the number that you've given to the hat you've created. So say you created 3 hats and the third one was the one you wanted to spawn in, as long as in your item file that we made earlier on, it was the number 3, you would basically pop the number in, press enter, and now you've got it. Now it does seem to me that the texture hasn't worked here, so let's go quickly check our JSON file to check what's going on. Yeah, for some reason, it doesn't seem to have the word custom there, so let's do block custom, and then we'll do block custom. Save that bad boy real quick. And then a really nice thing you can do in Minecraft is if you hold F3 and press T, that will actually reload the resource pack immediately. And now you can see that the hat is properly textured and ready to go. So if you ever encounter any texture errors, just make sure the directories are all nice and sound. Let's pop this on our head then, shall we? And there we are. Look at it. It's working straight away. This is fantastic. And of course, in first person mode, absolutely no pumpkin blur, which is brilliant. Now, if you are a bit of a purist and you would like to retain the pumpkin blur for whatever reason, we can move this hat over to a different item. So let's do that now. So instead, we're going to pop it onto some leather horse armor, and looking inside of the file, it is near identical to the previous one. Of course, the item name is changed up here, and everything else here should be exactly the same as the previous one we did. We're going to do a quick F3 and T to refresh the resource pack to make sure everything's tip top, and this time around we are going to place it on with a different command. So we're going to do /item replace entity, which is basically like a mob, you know, a player, anything like that. I'll pop InTheLittleWood in here, but you maybe want to do @self if you want to do that, or @s. We're going to replace what is on my armor.head. We're going to replace it with, and then we're going to do leather horse armor, and then just like last time we're going to do custom model data and 1. And there you go, that is on my head. And now it means that if you didn't want to do the whole pumpkin method, then this is the way to do it. The only issue with this though is that if you take the hat off and place it over here, you can't get it back on because obviously leather horse armor isn't typically worn. So this function is great if you happen to be like the server admin or you don't mind having the odd command block here or there. And another benefit to actually doing the leather horse armor instead is that it actually allows for transparencies. So by that I mean if on your texture you had, say, let's have a look, if I painted a white block here, which is obviously opaque, if I took the brush down to like half opacity and it was only half see-through, you can't do that on a pumpkin, but you can on an item. So that's one of the potential reasons why you'd want to go for an item over a block for a potential hat. One thing you may have also noticed as well is that the name of it is still literally leather horse armor. I will have a custom command in the description that you can use, which will basically allow you to insert a name of your choosing. And then there is one more really cool thing that I think people might enjoy, and that is the ability to alter the color of the hat with just a command. There is just a minuscule little bit of pre-work that we have to do, which is why we're back here in Blockbench. So let's go back into the paint mode, and you want to click on these triple dots up here for the toolbar. Click on customize, and you want to type in the word tint. By the looks of it, I've already got it enabled. It will just appear on this list if you haven't turned it on just yet, and you turn that on and you're good to go. If you don't have it, you may need to find it within plugins, and you can type in the word tint, and it might be inside of here as well. And just before anybody gets a little bit confused and struggles to see why it's not appearing on their toolbar in paint mode, you do have to change the block type to be per face UV as opposed to box UV. Don't really know why, it's just the way it is. So now that you've got tint in your toolbar at the top, you want to enable that. And you want to choose, for now, let's start with white, okay? We're going to draw some white just there. I'm going to choose a slightly darker color. I'm going to keep painting and painting darker shades as we go up the hat. Now, what's really cool about this method is basically the base color that we choose. So for example, today I might use a lime green. The lime green will be exactly how it's meant to be on the white. But then obviously on that next piece of coloring, the gray, it will be a slightly darker version of lime green. And as it goes up the hat, you'll see how it will darken and darken and darken. And you can basically change this at whim with just a command. It's fantastic. So we've updated that. I'm going to do a Control S to save all of that. That should have saved the model as well as the texture. And then we're going to use this little web page on Minecraft Tools, which is basically for Minecraft armor crafting. So if I go for a green, go for a really sort of like limey kind of green, and then press Generate Crafting, the main piece of information we're looking for here is this number. So for this one, it's 7076466. Let's do a quick F3 and T to refresh the resource pack. Lovely stuff. I'm going to paste in the command, which you can find in the description. And then all we're going to change here is just this number right here. So my number from a moment ago was 7076466. And when I press enter, boom, there it is. Oh, I've somehow painted the ear as well. I don't know when that happened, but it's fine either way. And it doesn't have to be black or white colors either, because clearly that ear was originally blue and pink, and it seems to have happened there as well. But you can see how the hat has now got a gradient working all the way up it, and it looks really, really cool. If I do that number from before, just the base one from the copy paste, it is a purple. Ooh. So it slowly changes it, and you can do it all on the fly with a single command. So there we go. That's how you create a hat. Nice and simple. And you'll be very pleasantly surprised to know that in order to create, say, a weapon or a tool, it is done in the exact same way. All right, so let's goof around and make this thing into a stone sword, okay? So we're going to go into the same folder that we previously have for carved pumpkin and leather horse armor, which is assets, Minecraft models item. And we're going to go ahead and pop one in there called stone sword. Again, this text will be in the description, and it looks very similar to all the previous ones. We're going to set the ID number of 1, and then we do need to create a new folder and pop the model in there as well. So it's going to be item, custom, and then the name of your model. So if we look here, you've got all of these item JSONs. You want to create a brand new folder called custom. Go inside of that, and then that's where you drop your model. I found that I didn't actually have to update the directory on the texture, which is quite nice. So no work to do on that front. We're going to do a quick refresh of the resource pack. And then if we do the same command as before, so give me a stone sword, and then we're going to do the custom model data, and we're going to do obviously ID number 1. Boop. And then there it is. That is now technically a stone sword. It's obviously got everything going on with it. If I go into game mode survival, we can see how it behaves like a stone sword. So there you go. We can do crits with it. If you can actually hit your shots, kids, there you go. And that's basically how it works. Now, there is a limitation to this in that you can't create fully custom weapons and give them unique, power levels and stuff like that. So this will always be a stone sword. It's always going to have 5 attack damage, and it's always going to be 1.6 attack speed. But what's nice about this is you can do everything that you could with any other sword. So you can do all the correct enchantments and everything like that. You can pop it in an enchantment table, and it's all going to be working just as you would imagine. That's not an enchantment table. Where is it? Enchantment table. Lovely. So yeah, you're going to be able to pop that into there. You're going to be able to put your weird stone sword in there, and everything's going to work with sharpness and unbreaking and everything as it normally would. And that, everybody, is the absolute extent of my knowledge currently when it comes to creating custom items, tools, weapons, and hats for Minecraft Java Edition. Of course, this is all done with resource packs, so if you've got friends that want to see them as well, they also have to have the same resource pack enabled, just as a little heads up. But that's all I know for now. Big props to Violet. She is the one who taught me how to do this. She literally spent like an hour with me on Twitch, running me through all these little details and stuff. And I just thought, because I've had so many questions about it, that I would share this information with you all as well. If you do want to see my creative process, by the way, of me creating each hat for every rat that's on the Rats SMP, then all of those VODs are up on YouTube right now. You can go to youtube.com/InTheLittleWood live. If you do have any questions, if they're not too technical, I might be able to help out. But this video hopefully should stand well enough and get you going where you need to head to. And now I'm going to leave it in your capable hands. Go ahead and make something. Tweet it to me if you want to. I'm at InTheLittleWood over there, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.